Mrs. Connors, you are a superstar at the AACC, American Association of Christian Counselors. You have a really long title that I'm not even going to attempt to try and describe.
My title is Senior Director of Counseling, Continuing Education, and Credentialing. And then I'm also the Director of the International Board of Christian Care. And I'm also the Co-Director of the Ethics and Advocacy Division. So I take him into the room. I sit down in front of him, and he's on a beanbag, and I'm like kneeling in front of him, like, tell me what's going on. And this kid is so mad, and he just slaps me across the face.
I remember one therapy session where I actually had to cut it off and say, we need to stop right now. I had to get out of the room. I've had an and if they see it in me, like I might have a physical, like my face, my neck gets red or something. I'm getting angry, or I'm starting to have a moment.
Inside, was I upset and like really like, I told my husband when I came home that day, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. I just got slapped in the face by a 4-year-old.
Yeah,
like, I don't know if I can do this.
Ethics for me, it's just been boring, and like, you got to click that button. We have to get 6 hours of CEUs with ethics, but you make it very interesting. You make it something that I'm willing to listen to and talk about.
I worked in a locked unit for teenagers. This was if the juvenile detention center had overflow, we took the overflow. So it was crazy. I saw so many things.
Do you see some danger in the social media TikTok therapists, the Instagram therapists?
There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of people that over-identify with mental health diagnoses. Now we've swung the pendulum over here, and everybody's talking about it's about everything.
It's like, I think I'm diagnosing this person in my life who's mistreating me. Narcissists are everywhere.
Most narcissists don't have a concern that they have it, so that's a part of the diagnosis.
The therapist just getting vulnerable. Probably what I struggle with the most is when they say something like, oh, John, your life is pretty nice. You don't have the problems that I have. And I'm like, you don't know me.
I'm playing out her pattern with my husband. My husband is in Philadelphia. He's about ready to have major surgery. He's not going to be here for 3 to 3.5 weeks. You know, they see me tearing up from time to time, you know, about, you know, daddy being gone. I have allowed my children to see my struggle.
What do you think you're learning right now?
I am learning that it's okay to ask for help, first of all, and second of all, that I am asking for help from the people that are trustworthy. I don't have to do everything. I try to do everything.
Hey, life is very difficult sometimes. You could be going through relationship problems. You could be having issues at work. You could be struggling with an addiction, depression, anxiety. There are all kinds of reasons why we struggle. And there aren't a lot of resources out there at times when we need immediate help. Yes, there are therapists. Yes, there are psychiatrists, but sometimes those waiting lists are long, and just to reach out to somebody, it can be overwhelming. And so I want to recommend to you Recovery Alive. Recovery Alive is this faith-based program that you can immediately engage with a community of people who are going to love you and walk you through your struggle. One of the first things you want to do if you want to get involved in this program is get a hold of the Recovery Alive Handbook. You can work on this handbook one-on-one with one safe and supportive person. Or you could get online, recoveryalive.com, and get into some of our communities. We have groups of gender-specific recovery 12-step processes that you can walk through with safe and supportive people. Connect to those folks. Or maybe you're somebody who is trying to get out of a difficult situation, whether you've come out of a rehabilitation clinic, or we have folks who are coming out of jails and prisons. We have Recovery Alive homes, safe transition homes. We have all kinds of programming to help you. But if you're watching this or listening to Living on Incline, connect with Recovery Alive. Get a hold of this book. Get a hold of maybe one safe and supportive person. Check out our online programming and get the help that you need, and get it today. You don't have to suffer alone. Well, hey, everybody, welcome to Living on Incline. I'm John Eklund, and I'm here with Dr. Mercy Connor. We're so glad that you're here, Mrs. Connors. You are a superstar at the AACC, American Association of Christian Counselors. You have a really long title that I'm not even going to attempt to try and describe. So would you introduce yourself to our folks? And by the way, hey, just a reminder, hit that subscribe button, like, follow, all the stuff that you do. And we appreciate you guys so much. And anyway, yeah, why don't you introduce yourself, Dr. Mercy?
All right, I am Dr. Mercy Connors. I am currently living in the state of Virginia, and I am a licensed professional counselor in Virginia. And I work for the American Association of Christian Counselors, like he said. My title is Senior Director of Counseling, Continuing Education, and Credentialing. And then I'm also the Director of the International Board of Christian Care. And I'm also the co-director of the Ethics and Advocacy Division. And I'm sure there's a couple other things in there that I could mention, but I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, you know what's so impressive about you is that my least favorite classes, both with CEUs and with college and all that kind of stuff, and I think everybody would get on board with this if they're in the human behavior world, is ethics. Ethics for me, it's just been boring and like, you got to click that button. We have to get 6 hours of CEUs with ethics, but you make it very interesting. You make it something that I'm willing to listen to and talk about. What so my question is, why ethics? What interests you about it? It's just like it's like accounting. I'm like, who wants to work with numbers? Who wants to work with ethics? Why is that interesting to you?
One of the things that I think is so important about ethics is that it keeps you safe. And in the therapeutic relationship, there are goods and bads, and then there are do's and do nots. And that's one of the things that I think is wonderful about ethics, is that if you really understand the do's and do nots, the good can really flourish. And then the bad kind of takes care of itself. And so that's one of the reasons why I really love ethics. The other reason is that we as Christians, we as believers in Christ are supposed to do good always and do no harm. And that's going to look different in each and every situation. And so I love getting into that nitty gritty. And that's one of the reasons why I like doing consulting with clinicians and with coaches, because I want to really understand the situation. And then there are some clear pathways, and then there's some gray. And that's where
that's what I'm interested in, is the gray. So if you know what the good is, you know what the bad is, but there's a bunch of gray in this. How do you manage the grays? Because I think you are sort of a black and white person. I think the grays are a little tough.
Yeah, the gray.
And what are those grays in therapy?
Yeah, the gray is a little bit harder. I will say that the gray, I feel like, is where you allow the Holy Spirit to work in the most. Because I think if you don't know what's going on in that person's head, you don't really actually know what's happening in their life. You are getting one perspective, which is theirs, but other people may have different perspectives, and the thing that they said may not have been exactly how they said it. So
right.
So that's where I really love getting into, okay, you could take it in this direction, you could take it in this direction, and you kind of allow the Holy Spirit to really move in a way that is very vital in that client's life. But it's also moving in the clinician's life, because as you know, in client care, how many things of our own stuff come into the forefront, and then you're like, okay, is that me? Is that them? And then that really helps too, because now you, as a clinician, have the ability to grow if you allow it to grow you.
Yep, and it's challenging. You and I do some training on motivational interviewing, and relationship is a huge part of therapy, is getting into a relationship with your client. Therapy, I think, is all about how to draw a person into a relationship of trust. And you said safety. So I have to care about, I can't just pretend to care about that person or do a good job in therapy of saying, I really manipulated them to a place where they now trust me. I pulled them into my trust, and now I can manipulate their emotions and get at what their struggle is. You actually have, I think that's almost evil. I think you have to get into like a familiarity of almost friendship. And this is where I think we don't talk enough about. I think Yalom did such a great job in his book Gift of Therapy about, you start reading some of his stuff, you're like, boy, he's doing a lot of self-disclosure. He's doing a lot of connection. It just feels risky, but that's how I operate. So this is what I wanted to push you on. You have done therapy. You're not quite engaged in that. You're doing a lot of trainings and teachings and all that stuff. But in that relationship with your client, taking those risks, did you,
Yes.
especially with teenagers and kids, just personally, you and me talking, is there times where you were like, oh, maybe I got a little too involved here, got a little too close to this client? Do you have some examples of that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think, especially with working with kids and with
Yeah.
teenagers, you really invest, and you also see,
Mm-hmm.
because I did intensive in home, so I was actually in the home with the child, so I really
Oh
saw
man.
the
Mm-hmm.
family dynamics, and that was even more so like getting involved in the
Yeah.
family.
In the
um,
house.
in the house, yeah, and
Wow.
and I
Yeah,
could
that's good
be there,
stuff.
depending on the situation, I could be there anywhere from an hour to 3 hours at a time, and so, yes, and it
Wow.
it was
What
intense.
was that? So who was that with? Who did you do that with?
So I worked with it's called National Counseling Group, and they were here in the Virginia area, and I did that for, goodness, 3 years? 3 years, yeah.
Okay.
And then I also worked in a school. And so, of course, I worked with, then that was completely different. So my days looked like this, where I started in the school and I would work with 4-year-olds because I worked with pre-K, and then I would go and work with
Four-year-olds.
teenagers in the afternoons.
That sounds a little bit like my personal nightmare, honestly. I hate to say it. I like my kids, but
But you know what? It was wonderful because, and I was
mhm.
even talking about this with some of my other employees here at AACC, is that what my 4-year-old was dealing with was often the same thing that my teenager was dealing with, but it was just on
Oh,
different
yeah.
levels. But it was the same thing that they wanted. They wanted safety, they wanted trust, they wanted good
Yeah.
relationships with their parents and their peers, and with their teachers. But then they also struggled within themselves to produce behaviors that their authorities were looking for, even though those behaviors would look different for a 4-year-old as compared to a teenager. It was still the same struggle, and you were doing the same
Mhm.
things. And that was what I actually loved about it, because I would actually use some of the stuff I was doing with my 4-year-olds with my teenagers, and it would kind of work better than with the 4-year-olds.
So we talk about transference and countertransference.
Yeah.
Describe that a little bit to somebody who's watching. They're like, I don't know what the heck that means, or maybe just have a really basic working knowledge. What is transference and countertransference, and why do we need to pay attention to that as therapists?
Sure, sure. So transference is really the client's feelings towards the clinician. And the
Mhm.
transference is often something that the client is feeling or struggling with, that they're trying to then play out with the therapist. And the
Right.
reason, and really, you can't have transference and countertransference unless you have a very secure, safe relationship, because
Yeah.
the client won't feel safe to bring that stuff out, right? Unless they really do feel that safety. So oftentimes that transference is happening because that client's trying to figure out how to do it. The other thing is that's a behavior, like
Mm.
pattern that they do often. And so really, it's really important that the clinician sees that and is like, "Oh, now I understand why," in my context, "why your parent gets upset when you say stuff like this," because it
You're
comes out
right.
very harsh, or it comes out
Right.
very direct, or
Right.
even you're not actually saying the thing that you want to say. You're saying it like over here, but you're meaning
Right.
this. So that's really helpful. But then there is countertransference, and that's when the clinician has their own
Yeah.
feelings towards the
Yeah.
client. Sometimes that's helpful. Again, like what I just said, there is, oh, I get how your parent would be responding to you like this at this point in time. Cause yeah, that's kind of
Right.
knocking on me and I didn't do anything,
Right.
you know?
Right.
But then it could also be that the clinician has their own unresolved stuff and that the client may be doing something similar to, say, the clinician's own parent or own
Right.
spouse or own child or what have you. And then the
Hmm.
clinician has to say, is that me or is that you? And if it's me,
Yeah.
I
And
don't bring.
I think about, for me, an example of that is I've had clients who get really frustrated with my lack of shock or response that is appropriate to what they're bringing, what they would think is appropriate to what they're bringing to me as far as like the horrors of their life.
Yeah.
And they'll I can feel it, like they're bringing something every week that's just, for them, is their world is falling apart, and I'm having empathy. But I think what happens is they want more of a investment from me
Hmm.
in that relationship. I don't know if you know what I'm saying. I almost like I need to come across there and give them a hug or give them money, or I don't know, something to just
Yeah.
like, John, you're not doing enough. And so they're feeling that. And so this is something that I was thinking about and having this conversation with you, where I'm thinking, like, as a therapist, just getting vulnerable, probably what I struggle with the most when it comes to that countertransference is when they say something like, "Oh, John, your life is pretty nice. It must be nice to be in your position. You're a successful therapist, and you got this great family." And I'm like, "You don't know me." And they're saying, "And you don't have." Basically, they say, "You don't have the problems that I have." And it is very difficult for me at that moment not to be like, "Listen, let me tell you about my life." That all of a sudden they're pulling me into this thing where I want to defend myself. I want to say, my life is hard too. You don't know me and you don't know what I'm going through sitting here with you. Um, so I wonder if that's anything that you've experienced where, have you ever had a client get to you where they, I don't know if you have an example. I'm putting you on the spot, like an example right off the bat where somebody got you and you're
Yeah.
feeling it. Like I've had an they can, and if they see it in me, like I might have a physical, like my face, my neck gets red or something. I'm getting angry or I'm starting to have a moment. I remember one therapy session where I actually had to cut it off and say, we need to stop right now. I had to get out of the room. I don't know if you've ever had anything like that before, but we're humans, right? So I'm
Yeah.
just wondering, have you ever had that situation as a therapist where you get honest and go like, somebody got to me, somebody got me?
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, I work with teenagers, so, like, it was
Right.
like
Yeah, they get you.
it was like a
Right.
thing, like, they
Woo!
tried, and even my four-year-olds would do the same thing, it was, for me okay, and this is disclosure, it was bucking my authority, like, "You're not my teacher,
Yeah.
you don't
Woo!
I don't have to do what you say," things like that, and that really yeah, that was a struggle for me because I was the adult, and I'm like, "Excuse me, you're 4." Like, yes, you do what I do have to do what I do
Right.
what I say. But then I understood what the problem was, is that they were having a trouble with the authority. And so this
Sure.
is where I would switch it. And when I would recognize it, I would switch it and say, this isn't what I'm saying. This is what your teacher is saying. And that's why we're going to do what your teacher says because they're your authority. And that kind of helped me. Again, like I said, I work with kids. So I always had to frame it back to this is what your parent is saying, or this is what your teacher is saying, or this is what your coach is saying. Um, because I had to remind them that maybe I'm not the authority, and that's okay. I don't need to be the authority in your life. I am
Mm.
helping you and your authority come back together and to make a plan. So there were times when that would happen. But there were times you were talking about how you can't react. I have a perfect example of that. So
Come on.
my first day in the pre-K that I worked at. So I worked with 4-year-olds, okay, 3 or 4-year-olds. First day, I mean, I am dropped into the middle of it. It's in the middle of the school year. So I'm given clients that I don't even know yet. I am just saying they just met Miss Mercy that day, okay? And one of the kids is struggling, so we had to take him out of the classroom we had a calm down room, so we took him to the calm down room. And I'm just trying to figure out what's happening because the other 2 clinicians are already being utilized in other classrooms.
Yeah.
So I have to take this kid out. So I take him into the room. I sit down in front of him, and he's on a beanbag, and I'm kneeling in front of him. I'm like, "Tell me what's going on." And this kid is so mad, and he just slaps me across the face.
Oh.
And what I did there is, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do?" I didn't react. I said, "Okay, it looks like you're mad." And I didn't give him any anger.
It
I didn't
looks
give
like
him
you're mad. Yeah.
It looks like you're mad. That was what I
It
said.
just feels like you might be a little upset with me right now. I'm not
Yeah,
sure, but I think you might
yeah.
be angry right now.
Yes. So, and it was funny, I didn't react to this kid at all, even though I wanted to, obviously, but I
Right.
didn't. And in that situation, he calmed down because I didn't
Oh,
respond.
right.
I didn't take his bait. You know what I mean? He
Yeah.
wanted me to get angry and to probably yell at him or do something like that
Sure.
because that's probably what other people would have done, right? But I
Yeah.
didn't. And that kid never did it to me again. And he
That's good.
also, even though he would get angry with me before,
Yeah.
in the subsequent months, he knew that I wasn't going to react. And so he never tried that again. Now, I also gave him a little bit more space after that.
But
I wasn't as close, you
you
know.
did you wear a helmet? Yeah, no.
No, it was
Yeah.
I'm telling you that was probably the most interesting place I ever worked, but
Wow.
it was great in that situation.
Mm,
I recognized what it was, and he wanted me to play out his pattern, and I wouldn't play
yeah.
out his pattern. Now, inside, was I upset and, really, I told my
Ooh.
husband when I came home that day, I'm like, "I don't know if I can do this. I just got slapped in the face by a 4-year-old. I don't know
Yeah,
if I can
yeah.
do this." But I went back and I gained that relationship with that kid. Um, did he still struggle? Yes, he did. He had a really hard home life. I didn't even know this kid at all, so I found out more about his home life and what he was going through at home and what his brother went through and all of these different things, and then I'm like, "I get that. I
Yeah.
understand why he responded the way he did."
Yeah.
But it was
So
it
you
was
go
definitely
home.
a learning experience for me.
You go home and tell your husband that this kid slapped you across the face, and
Yeah.
that's part of this deal is we're having conversations with our loved ones about obviously we have HIPAA and all that. We can't get specific, but we're carrying some of those things home with us. And
Oh,
how
yeah.
has your husband been impacted by your profession and good and bad? Like what just as a human with kids, um, with a husband who loves you and is watching you sometimes come home and be like, "Man, I had a great day and had some
Mhm.
breakthroughs." And then those days where you're like, "I just got the crap beat out of me physically, emotionally." Like I am it's got to be all over you. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that about you, Dr. Mercy. You definitely are vulnerable and can talk about the stuff that's going on with you're very professional, but also it's just you balance that very well. So I imagine you carry some of this stuff home. How's your husband been impacted by the work you do?
Yeah, actually, it's been really wonderful having my husband be there because he's not affected by the emotions of these kids or their stories or anything like that. All
Right.
all he does is hear me. And, more
Sure.
of what I'm talking about is how it's impacting me, not what's
Right.
really happening with the children.
Sure.
There was one point in time, we were early married, maybe 4 months into marriage at this point, and I came home and I was not raging, but close to that. Like, I was
Sure.
really upset and I was
Yeah.
really frustrated. And we actually got into an argument, me and my husband did. I can't even tell you what it was about. Um, but throughout that argument, I assumed like 3 or 4 times that he had said something that he didn't actually say. And it was really bad. It kind of like escalated the argument really, really bad. And then he turns to me and he goes, "Is this what your teenager is doing?" And I was like,
Ooh.
"Oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
is. I'm playing out her pattern with my
Wow.
husband."
Wow. Wow.
But it had to be his understanding of, this is not like Mercy. He had to know me well enough
Mm-hmm.
to know, this is not like you. You don't normally do this. And then for him to give me that, and I had to, it stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, okay, let me
Mm-hmm.
think through this. And it stopped my prefrontal cortex came back online. I was like, wait, hold on a second, I gotta think through this, which was great,
Right.
because in that argument I
So good.
couldn't bring it back, because I was so upset. and
Yeah.
and then it was like, that is what I'm doing. I am playing
Yeah.
out her pattern. And so, going back to work with her after that really was helpful, because then I started to notice it so much more.
Wow.
That she would do a lot of assuming, and she would be kind of egging on the arguments that she would have with her parents by saying things that they didn't say. So one of the
Yeah.
things that we did after that is, I would actually, when they would be in an argument, I'd sit them both in a chair and I would let her speak, and then I would let the parents speak. And I'm like, wait, 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 wait. You said this. They
Yeah.
didn't say that. And and
Yeah.
and I can tell you that that was probably the biggest breakthrough that we had with that family, is that we
Because it
talked.
happened at home.
It
It happened
happened.
at home. You could see it in yourself in order to see it in them.
Yes. Yes.
So good. And that's the importance of having that self-awareness and having good people in your life to call you out. That
Yes.
is huge. What a great example. And thinking about the work of counseling and what we're trying to do for people in therapy, and your work with the American Association of Christian Counselors, you guys put out so much information, great training. Phil Smith, head of the mental health coaching division, just Kyle Sutton, they're putting out these certifications, not just the mental health coaching, but trauma informed, doing motivational interviewing. Now they have the veterans certification and our Recovery Live certification, all that kind of stuff. Consumers of mental health coaching, counseling, there's a lot of stuff out there for folks that is fantastic, what you guys are doing. But then there's like the TikTok therapists. I'm not saying they're all bad or problematic. There's some good stuff, but more and more, this is what happens in therapy. John, before we start, can I just show you this TikTok video that I got on narcissism? I think that my husband is a narcissist. Let me just show you this video. And I'm like, I want to be supportive. I want them to bring solutions to the table. I want them
Mhm.
to be looking for ways to improve themselves and put tools into their toolbox. But some Instagram reel of some guy out there who has no training or certifications. He's just an influencer, and he might be saying some good stuff that he looked up on AI. I'm being a little
No,
resentful
but
here.
you're right. You're right. It does happen.
Do you feel that? I think, and it's narcissism specifically for me, which I think you and Sinead do a great job of talking about some of those things, but I think
Excellent.
narcissism is the new ADHD, I think I'm OCD because I like to have things lined up. I like my pencils lined up on my desk. Well, you may not have an OCD diagnosis. That just, you might like to have your pencils lined up on your desk. I'm saying a lot of things right now, but what's the danger? Do you see some danger in the social media, um, TikTok therapist, the Instagram therapist? Do you see any
Sure,
danger in that?
sure.
Recovering marriage is a game changer if you want to either save your marriage or simply strengthen it. If you want to take your marriage from good to great, or if your marriage is in real trouble, either way, recovering marriage can be extremely beneficial. One of the ways that you can use this resource, Recovering Marriage, is you can get involved in our online recovering marriage groups. You can plug into those groups at recoveryalive.com. Also, if your church wants to get a group started, you can get a hold of this book and our leadership material of how to run a recovering marriage group in your church. These groups take about 14 to 16 weeks. They're based on the 12 commitments of recovering marriage. And I'm telling you, so far, everything we've heard about these things is we are seeing marriages saved. We're seeing divorce papers being tore up. We're seeing recommitments, vow renewals. It's been absolutely epic what we've seen happen as people work through the 12 commitments of recovering marriage. We also are having weekend intensives. If your church is interested in having a full day intensive of recovering marriage, for us to come in and lead an entire day of working through the 12 commitments, we'd love to come to your church and your community and run one of those intensives. You can get all of this information at recoveryalive.com. You can go on Amazon and get this book as well if you just want to research it a little bit. The 12 Commitments of Recovering Marriage are changing lives. Check it out today.
I think one of the things that we have to understand is that for a long time, there was this huge stigma around mental health.
Sure.
And so people weren't
Good.
allowed to
Yeah.
talk about it. So really the only people that really understood mental health were people like you and me who would go to
Right.
school for flipping forever, it felt like, to get degrees and then to
Yeah.
get licensed and then to work with
Mm-hmm.
people. But really, it's been a great thing to have this mental health awareness to reduce that
Good.
stigma,
That's
to
good.
allow a mental health to be a part of the conversation. So if you think of like the major stigma as like a pendulum, and it was way up here and nobody was talking about it, and now we've swung the pendulum over here,
Sure.
and everybody's talking about it. It's about everything. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of people that over-identify with mental health diagnoses or different things that they're doing. So you got that happening over here. What we need really is more this balanced look at it. This
Yeah.
yes, we need to hear people's experiences and what they're going through. Those clients that are really actually working with clinicians and what that means. You don't want the stigma. You want there to be information out there. You don't want just the professionals to know some of this stuff. But we need to bring that pendulum back to the middle and have a balanced view. Here is the thing. I love that mental health is being talked about. You also have to understand that people are people and that they have their
Yeah.
own experiences, and that's not everybody's experience. So even though you may have somebody who says, "Hey, I think I may be OCD because I want my pencils all in a row," then you're like, "Okay, let's go and do an assessment, see if that's really what's happening." That's the wonderful thing about it. It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
medicine, right? You had those people that didn't really know a lot about medical, and then you had the WebMD, like, the and now they're like,
Oh my
"I have
gosh, I am
this."
dying.
They're
My
diagnosing
elbow
themselves.
hurts and I have brain cancer. Yep.
Exactly, exactly, but we have to remember too that knowledge is power. That's true,
Mm-hmm.
but it's good knowledge. It's a
Mm-hmm.
it's a balanced knowledge of that. When your clients bring you TikTok videos, I think that's wonderful. Is the TikTok
Right.
video about them or is it about somebody else? And that's always what I want to
Always
ask.
about somebody else. It's
Always
about somebody else. Yeah, that's a good point. That's what it is. It's like, I think I'm diagnosing this person in my life
Right.
who's mistreating me. And I think specifically, I'm really frustrated and struggling with narcissism. And I'd love your take on this, because again, I think you and Shanae do a bunch of stuff on that. And I feel like so many people excuse their own lack of, man, I want to work on this relationship, or it's almost like permission to disconnect completely from somebody because they are a narcissist, or be able to say, I don't have a responsibility or ownership in this relationship because I'm dealing with somebody who's a narcissist, where narcissistic personality disorder is a pretty small percentage. But like,
Yes.
if if I could clock somehow, or put together some kind of percentage of the people that I'm working with who have a narcissist in life, then it's like it's becoming a pandemic. Narcissists are everywhere, and so as you're doing this, some of these trainings on narcissism and the abuse, narcissistic abuse that we see. Balance this out for us, Dr. Mercy. Help me, because I'm getting a little frustrated with
Sure.
that just seems very like a hot trend, and I think I feel like I know why, and it's that it's just very easy to peg somebody that you're dealing with that disorder so that you can just take off your responsibility. Am I off on that?
No, I think you're right. I think a lot of clients come in and they're like, "Well, this person, if I didn't have this person acting the way that they do, then my life would be perfect." And I think we
Yeah.
have to go to that of, okay, so you're saying if this person was not acting this way, then everything in your life would be fine. So that means that your health would
Mhm.
be great. That means your sleep would be great. That means that your relationships with other people that don't have anything to do with this person would be great. So then you're trying to help them see that this person you're making as central is not actually central to
Yeah. Good.
your health and your well-being. Now, I will say this, has the population as a whole, our culture, has it allowed for narcissism to grow, or symptoms of narcissism? I want to speak like that. Symptoms of narcissism to grow. Yes, I will say that is very,
Okay.
very true. The antidote to that is having good skills and boundaries when working with these individuals. There is nothing that you can do to make that narcissistic person, or those that are just showing narcissistic symptoms, to change. That has to be all on them. They have to make that
Right.
decision in their own life. What can you do in your life? What are you able to control? And we talk about this in clinical. It's like your locus of control. What can you control? What can't you control? And I think
Yeah.
when we focus on that, and also when you start implementing good skills, like I'm thinking specifically like good boundaries, good ways of saying
Yeah.
no in a very nice way, but still saying no and then keeping with that boundary, not moving it after you say no. I think that is where you're going to see a little bit of change on that individual's in that individual way that they're going to respond to you. It also just helps you to say, I said no and I stuck with that
Yeah.
no. Was that uncomfortable for
Yeah.
me to stick with that no? Yes. But did I do it?
Yeah.
Yes. And then that person changed the way that they responded to me the next time they asked me to do something, or the next time we had a difficult interaction. I think
Yeah.
that
And
that's
you and I have talked about codependency boundaries, how important that is. And if you're dealing with somebody who has that tendency to be selfish, uh, really focus on their own needs and their own narrative, or have a behavior that's extremely dysfunctional or dangerous, how do you put those boundaries in place?
Mhm.
Going back to narcissism, what I struggle with, and I think you hit on, is that a lot of narcissistic um, behavior that is identified as usually this person is. It's very rare that somebody says, I think I'm narcissistic. So I'm
Right.
like, I watched this TikTok video. And I realize I'm a narcissist. I have never seen it in my life. I've never seen somebody have this self-awareness. I think that's me. They always go, my husband, my wife, my girlfriend, my parents.
Yes.
I never knew it's them. And I believe that that's part of the issue for me is it just feels like it is others directed 99.9% of the time because addiction. So let's take addiction for example. I think if you're struggling with addiction, a substance use disorder, you probably are going to display like the DSM is going to have a checklist that looks a lot like narcissism.
Yes.
Consume with your own needs.
Yes.
Complete denial looks like this person who's completely hedonistic, delusions of grandeur of things they're going to do and self-importance. And so I think it's an interesting concept. I like your thought of the culture we live in. Maybe it's just getting more and more narcissistic in general. Just people are getting more selfish and more self-centered. But self-identifying as I'm the person who is selfish, I'm the person who is just focused on me. Are you seeing any of that? Are you seeing people go like, yeah, I guess that must be me? Like when you're doing your trainings, has anybody come up and self-identified, say, after you did your training, it's me. I'm the one.
No, I had never had that happen, but I do
Mm-hmm.
think that we can see there are times when each one of us struggle with those symptoms. I think that's why I want to say it's symptoms.
Sure.
It's not
Right.
like full on narcissistic personality disorder, which is actually interesting. To have narcissistic personality disorder, you have to have a concern that you have it. And most
Yeah.
narcissists
Right.
don't have a concern that they have it. So that's a part of the diagnosis.
You're probably why it's a low percentage because nobody will admit it when they have it. Yeah. Good point.
But
That's a
I
good
think the
point.
thing is too, is that we have become a culture that doesn't do a lot of self-reflection on,
Oh,
okay,
good.
what could I have done differently in this situation that could have made this go better? I think if we had a lot more of that, then I think you would see the narcissism go down, the symptoms go down. And I think this is gonna be individual, right? Okay, I was in this interaction with this individual, and I said this, and it probably came across as harsh, but I have to have that own introspection. I think that's what we're missing
Mm-hmm.
a lot in our culture is
Mm-hmm.
introspection of, "Okay, here's what I did. Could what I have done" my husband says this a lot, "Are you exploding the argument, or are you trying to damp it down? Are you trying to do everything you
Mm-hmm.
can to make it better? If you're not trying to
Yeah.
make it better, you're making it worse." So, I
Yeah.
think that's where you have to have your own introspection. Now, is that hard to do when you're in the interaction? Yes. So that's why you need to take time after the interaction and
Mm-hmm.
say, "Okay, what could I have done differently?" Or, "Let me
Yeah.
pause this. I can see that I'm getting really, really upset, or I can see that I'm not interacting properly with you. Can you give me 5 minutes to calm down, put my thinking cap back on, put that prefrontal cortex back online so that then I can react to you positively?" And then I think this is also where I love modeling. Modeling is one of the best teachers, is that when you see me do it, you are more likely to do it as well. So
Sure.
I think some people have to take their own, take themselves and say, okay, I'm going to put myself through this and say, okay, I'm going to think through the way that I'm doing this. I'm going to come back to that person and say, hey, I could have said this differently. Even if you think that that person is the problem, you still come back and say, hey, I
Mm-hmm.
think I should have said this differently. It changes the dynamic in the relationship. I've done that not only
Yeah.
with my husband, but I've done it with my children. I've done it with my parents. I've done it with my own friends and even my colleagues here of, hey, I could have said that differently and I should
Mm-hmm.
have probably said that differently. And it changes the relationship because now there's this mutual understanding. I have seen them come back to me and say, "Hey, I
Mm-hmm.
could have said this different." And I love that because that
Yeah.
encouraged the introspection. It encourages my growth, not your growth. I'm not talking about you. This is my growth.
So you've admitted that you're wrong sometimes,
Oh, yes.
huh? Once in a while.
It's very
That's
important in life to admit that you're wrong.
that's
It's
very
funny. I say this a lot, like, when people talk to me about my PhD, they said, "What did you learn for your PhD?" And I learned that I don't know very much. And now that I've,
yeah,
like, flipped that into my own personal life of, I don't know very much, I still have to be learning, I still have to be doing I'm a therapist, I've been a therapist for, goodness, 10, 12 years now. I've been doing this a long time. I'm not perfect, and that's okay. That's okay for me not to be
mhm,
perfect. I'm still learning and I want to learn. I want to be better. I want to be better not only with my relationships with clients, but I want to be better with my relationships with my kids, my husband, my
yeah,
parents, my colleagues. And if I'm not taking my own advice of working on that, then how am I supposed to expect
yeah.
other people to do that?
Yeah, I was in a session the other day, and, I had that conversation with a client, um, again, trying to follow some of that Yalom vulnerability and saying, like, "I am modeling a relationship that is safe and healthy." What I'm trying
Mm,
to do in this is model the fact that, safe and healthy relationships are possible. This person was saying, like, "I have no one in my life that is safe. I have no one in my life that really cares about me." And I said, "Can I interrupt you? I care about you." "Oh, I just pay you." I understand that, but I do care about you and I am safe. Do you think I'm safe? Yes, I think you're safe. And so part of what we do in therapy is model the relationship that is possible, that they can have with people, that they're likable, that they are worth um, loving.
mhm,
I think it would be hard for me. I I can't remember one of the AACC folks, the Christian counseling magazine had asked me to write an article on being a Christian therapist, and I said I'm going to probably do a different angle of that and talk about the fact that I'm a therapist who's a Christian because it's my worldview. I can't help but have the Holy Spirit love people in my sessions through me.
yeah,
Like that's what I'm going to do. And so it's not like a technique or a
mm,
theory. It's me and
mhm,
my worldview.
yeah,
C.S. Lewis, probably my favorite quote from him is he says, "I believe in Christianity as I believe the sun has risen, not because I see the sun, but by the sun I see everything else."
yeah,
That quote tells me that Christianity isn't just like a tree in my landscape. It's not part of the landscape. It's how I see my landscape. And so
mhm,
as a therapist, of course, I'm entering into a relationship. So as soon as I walk in, I'm bringing the Holy Spirit with me.
yeah,
I'm bringing my worldview. And and so just going like, hey, this is possible for you to be in safe relationships with people who have a care for you and a love for you. And so I love the modeling concept is that I am a representation of what's possible. And and to your point, my ability to admit when I'm wrong in therapy, which I've
mhm,
done, that's hard.
yes,
That is
yes.
very hard. I've come back. I've come back in the next session and said, I think I wasn't listening very well there, or I think last week um, when I said this, I think I was off. I think I misread that, or man, that is. But when just to your point, when I do it, it can be extremely powerful. Instead of just doubling down, I'm the expert in the room. Is to say the expert in the room is the client who's sitting there. They're an expert on them. So they know more. They have all the information, and so I love the modeling approach. And so I want to go into um, having that self-awareness. I'd love to hear a little bit about how did you get into all this, Dr. Mercy? What made you go like I want to do this thing called counseling and therapy? What brought you into this? How'd you grow up? Just as much as you want to share, as much as you want to be vulnerable. How did this? What kind of family did you have? How'd you grow up?
Sure. So I had a mom and a dad, and they were wonderful parents, both believers. Went to church every day that the doors were open.
Yeah.
I joke with people that I
And
was
pulled
I
you
was
with them.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Brought me
Yeah.
with them. So my dad is a family physician, so he's a doctor,
Okay.
but his spiritual gift is evangelism, and so that's what he
Mm,
saw as his avenue or his way to evangelize was through medicine, and so he did that daily, in his office. Obviously by asking people, "Do you want to hear about this?" And he would take them
mm.
through the gospel. And then my mom was a stay-at-home mom for most of my life, and then she also was a teacher. So she taught both me and my brother fifth grade at our Christian school, and then after we finished fifth grade, she moved into being our school's guidance counselor. And so, I came to know the Lord when I was 7 years old. My dad
Mm.
was very consistent about reading the Bible and Christian books to us before we would go to bed. And I remember at 7, my dad was reading in the book of Revelations, actually, chapter 11. I even know what chapter it was. And
Wow.
and it was talking about hell. And I'm like, Dad, I don't want to go there. I know that I will. I don't want to go there. So my dad gave me the gospel, and I accepted Jesus as my savior. And in my
Mm.
brothers, because my brother was I had an older brother, and we would all be in the same bed when he would do the reading and move to my room. And so I was in my brother's bed. I remember that like it was yesterday, and
Wow.
it was wonderful to come to know the Lord through my
Mm.
dad. And then, I had a wonderful upbringing. I was in a Christian school, but I always felt that God had a call in my life. I didn't know what that was, but eventually I really believed it was counseling. And the reason that it was is because my mom who was a counselor, I was a freshman in high school, so she was in the high school a lot, and she's like, "Mercy, do you notice that older kids come to you for advice?" And I'm like,
Mm.
no, I never noticed that. But then when she said it, like, I started to notice that some of these older kids would come to me and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Or even younger kids would
Mm.
say, "What do you think about this?" And so it kind of like sparked something in me that, maybe counseling would be a good path for me.
Right.
So I ended up graduating a
Marcia,
year
it
early.
reminds me of the Charlie Brown thing where I think one of the characters has like for 5 cents you can come and get advice.
Yes,
Was it from Lucy or something? I can
Lucy.
see you.
Yes.
I can see you as a kid just going like, How does that make you feel?" Yeah, something like that. And your
Yeah.
mom's like, "Wow, you got a gift."
Yeah. So it's so funny because actually, Charlie Brown's one of my favorite things, so I have a mug that's Lucy, like you were just
Oh
saying.
man,
Like, I
that
yes.
is perfect.
Yes. So, I started, really thinking about this, and I felt like God really put it on my heart, to go into counseling. And so I graduated a year early from high
Mm.
school, and I went into, college, and I went to a wonderful college. I recommend it to anybody. It's Toccoa Falls College. It's a small college in Northeast Georgia, and
Oh
it was
wow.
wonderful because it was also a mission school. So this is where a
Huh.
lot of missionaries would learn to become missionaries. They would learn anthropology and different languages and things like that. But it was also a lot of missionary kids would come to this
Mm.
school because their parents were from that school. So I really met some amazing kids that were missionary kids that lived overseas for their whole entire life while their parents were missionaries. And my parents always wanted to be missionaries. We were actually supposed to go and serve in India when I was 2 years old, and then political unrest made it impossible for
Wow.
us to
Wow.
go. So, but missions has always been a part of our life. We would go on a missions trip every year. My dad would use medicine, obviously, because that's his avenue to bring the gospel. And so
Mm.
this school just made sense for me because I was already invested in missions, and then meeting all of these missionary kids, I was like, this is what God has called me to. I am called to
Mm.
be a counselor for missionary kids, which is really funny that whenever somebody would be like, "Oh, so you're a missionary kid," I'm like, "No, no, I'm not. I just know what they need."
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful
Huh.
experience. I loved it. But it really showed me what I wanted to do in life. And was to work with missionary kids. So I went through, graduated from Toccoa Falls, and then I started my master's degree at Columbia International University, which again is another mission school. It didn't work out for me to stay there, but I ended up moving to Liberty, and so I got my master's degree at Liberty. And it was funny because I had never wanted a PhD. That was like the farthest thing from my mind. I'm like, I
Right.
do not want this. But I got the opportunity to have a PhD. And I was talking with my brother, and he's like, Mercy, just apply. Because I was like, I do not want to do this. He's like, if you apply and they don't accept you, then you don't have to do it. And I'm like, okay, that seems reasonable, because I knew my grades. My grades weren't that great that year. And I was like, okay, they're not going to take me because I know I don't have the grades. And lo and behold, they took me, and I was like, shh.
I
So,
have a hard time. When you say you didn't have the grades, you had like 1B? I don't
no,
believe that for one second.
so it was the first time I had ever taken an online course, so I really hadn't figured it out, and I didn't do well. And the funniest thing was, John, is it was the ethics course. I literally didn't do well in my ethics course.
That's amazing.
Isn't that
See?
hilarious?
There it is. Maybe
Yes.
you're like, well, you're probably like, this is terrible. Someday I'm going to fix what's broken in
Yeah.
the ethics courses. Yeah. It
Well,
might be
and
because you got a bad grade
I
that you
did
are an
well.
ethics guru.
It was that, but it was also, I didn't want to be licensed. So all throughout this, like, I knew what was coming down the pipe for licensed clinicians.
Sure.
I was adamant. I am never going to be licensed by a state, because I didn't want them to dictate what I could and could not say to my clients.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
I was like, so I didn't like the ethics codes either, which that was another probably disconnect for me in those classes.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It's a very
And this is how you
interesting
ended
thing.
up here. That's so cool. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yes.
I want to
So,
psychoanalyze that.
yeah, well, you should, because it's really an interesting
Yeah.
story. And so then anyway, so I went through my PhD program, and what I really wanted to do was work with missionary kids. Like, I wanted to do that as my practicum or my internship. And there wasn't really an opportunity for me to do it in my practicum. So I worked in a locked unit for teenagers for my practicum. That was
Whoa.
wild. It was, I mean, when we're talking like locked unit, this was, if the juvenile detention center had overflow, we took the overflow. So
Yep.
it was crazy. I saw so many things. There was one time
That was my
when
first.
Oh,
That was
you did
my
that
first
too?
real job. Yeah, at Lakeland Hospital in Springfield, Missouri. It was my first real job. I worked at a lockdown facility for adolescents, and it was a zoo.
It was a
It
zoo.
was what you're about to tell me. I probably have some similar experiences. It's traumatizing. And you, how old are you at this point when you're at this thing?
I was 22.
Oh man. Yeah, 22-year-old young lady in a facility like that. So,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was crazy. So, I'm supposed to go and do a group. Like, that was one of my things. I did a group every week. So I was coming in to do my group. Between me going from my office, which was across campus, to the actual locked unit, I had to walk or I had to drive. And so between me leaving my office and getting to the locked unit, they had done a lockdown, because there was a kid in the milieu, so in the main section, that had taken all the chairs and all the furniture and had built a fort. I don't know how he did that in that short amount of time, but it was a short amount of time. And so I do
Wow.
my normal thing to get in. They literally pull me in, because I had already walked in the door not knowing, pulled me into like the area that was locked for like all the safety for the clinicians. And I'm like, what is going on? Because they were
Wow.
afraid that he would come and attack anybody, because he had already
Sure.
attacked some of the orderlies, because they were trying to take down his
His
little
fort.
empire, his little fort that he had created.
Wow.
So that was
Wow.
something. I mean, we
That was
dealt with
day
all.
one.
That was that was like halfway through, but it was so
Oh,
funny
okay.
because this had happened
Jeez.
like in less than 10, 15 minutes from me walking
Wow.
over. So I was like, okay, so no group today,
Learning
but they couldn't let me
experience.
go. They couldn't let me leave because we had to go outside the door. So I was like, okay. So I'm just sitting there for like 20 to 30 minutes. Finally, he kind of like moved to another area in the milieu and
Mhm.
they're like, okay, we're going to sneak you back out. So it was crazy. There were so many things that I saw there that really just showed me. It was my first time to ever see a PTSD case. Um,
Yeah.
and it was like, I saw it. It wasn't like I did any questions. I literally saw it happening in front of me. And I'm like,
Wow.
this is real PTSD. I see this now. Very interesting situation. So then after that, I was like, well, I really want to work with missionary kids. And I had the opportunity
After
to,
that, you're like, please let me work with
please let me work with missionary
anybody
kids.
but this. This is nuts. Yeah, that is crazy.
So then I went over to the Philippines and I worked at Faith Academy in the Philippines with missionary kids for an entire
Wow,
year. I,
Philippines.
I
Oh,
loved
wow.
it. Was beautiful. It was
Mm.
wonderful. It was really the place where I felt like I got to be what I always wanted to be for God. Because I got to be a
Mm.
counselor, which obviously was something really important. I was a missionary, and then I also taught. So I taught AP psychology while I was there, and then I also coached volleyball and basketball while I was there. So
Oh, wow.
I I just loved it. That time was wonderful for me. I really felt like God grew me a lot in that. And this is where, I got to test out some of my ideas that I wanted to do for my dissertation to finish my degree. And so,
Mhm.
about a little less than a year later, I came back and did my dissertation. Um, uh, like getting the data from them. So they let me do an assessment on their kids, which was really amazing. So I was looking at
Mm.
um, attachment. So that's the relationship with the parents and the child, their attachment to God, and then their life satisfaction and psychological well being for these missionary kids. And it was the first like really big data set that we had gotten from missionary kids about attachment and God attachment. It was really interesting what we found out,
Mm.
that the kids really do feel like they have this really great connection to their parents. It was interesting, though, to see that they didn't have as much of a connection with God. Even though, their parents are missionaries, they're there because of God, they're there because of the work of the gospel. It really kind of threw me into a journey of, okay, why is that? Why is there that disconnect? And what we really determined is that it really is, again, going back to modeling, that the parents may have struggled with their relationship with God because, maybe the finances weren't coming in, or there was political
Yeah.
unrest, or we don't see God really moving, or a lot of these people don't see a lot of converts because of where they were stationed. Um, and so that's a very tough thing. But these kids are not interpreting that as connecting to God, of saying, well, God's got us here for a reason. So it was more of like, how do I model, or how does a parent model that healthy connection with God to their parents or to their children? How do they model
Sure.
that? And so that was something that I really loved finding out, was that it really does go back to Deuteronomy 4 through 6. As you go by the way, as you talk, as you see these memorials in your life, you've got to teach these things to your children, because that's the things that they're going to hold on to. Is, okay, mom
Mhm.
and dad say that things are tough right now, but I see them praying to God. I see them saying, I don't know what's going to happen, but God's going to get us through. It's those types of things that are going to help influence the relationship that the child has with God.
I I
Um
when you told me about this, about your dissertation, to me, it was fascinating that God seemed to call you into this specific world of missionaries very early in your life. But the
yes.
thing that was, to me, the most helpful is how, if you follow the research, this is the importance of research. If you follow the research, you can discuss, instead of going like, I want the research to tell me what I need it to tell me so that I can prove some point that I already have. But if you're curious and you say, I really want the research to show me something I haven't seen before. What an interesting, and in my mind, like a aha moment is that I grew up in church, and so had a lot of interaction with both like local community missionaries and foreign missionaries. And of course, that is it. It's constant financial frustrations and
Yes.
fear. I mean, you're itinerating constantly, going back to the States for months, kind of. I mean, and from an outsider's view, like begging churches for money on a constant basis, and if you don't
Absolutely.
get that money, you can't go back, you can't survive. Every summer is a man. I hope we make it, kids, and so
Mhm.
and low conversions. I think conditions are very difficult. And so
Yes.
I would think kids are watching all this happen, even if the parents are pretty good at modeling. If they're going like, "Hey, kids, it's going to be all right. God's going to provide." The kids are just seeing like, we're suffering and it's God's fault.
Yeah.
In a way, right? Like everywhere I look, there's a problem. It is just so. I think that would follow that research. Of course, the kids would be like, I don't know about this God guy because he's making my parent. I love my parents, and my parents are struggling. So
Yes.
anyway, I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, and it was not what I was expecting at all. It's actually
Right.
not what was shown in the research at all in the United States. So when they would look at
Hmm.
kids, and their parents here in the United States, they none of this was showing. And so that's where it
Sure.
really, but again, if you go back to the Bible, you're like, "Oh, this completely makes sense." That was my aha
Yeah.
moment, that this really has to go
Okay.
back to, we've gotta read Deuteronomy and say, "Okay, Deuteronomy is what we've got to do. We have got to model this to the children and say, "Hey, I don't know what's gonna happen now, but I remember 3 months ago when we were struggling, God brought us through in this
Sure.
way. So we know that it may not happen the same way twice." Talk about C.S. Lewis, he says to
Yeah.
Lucy, "It doesn't always happen the same way twice, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen in a different way, and it's going to teach me something else." And so if we bring this back to that, then we really do
Mm.
see that relationship with God for that child can grow. It's just you've
Yeah.
got to show the struggle. The parents have really, and this is what I've done in my own life because I know this research, is that I have allowed my children to see my struggle. I have allowed
Oh,
them now,
good. Whew.
developmentally appropriate, right?
No,
Because my kids are young.
but you're
Um,
right. I am so for this. I can't ever see my kids watch us fight. Well, how are they ever going to be able to figure out how to have conflict resolution if they don't watch you struggle and then figure things out as a couple? I don't want them to ever know that there are problems or go through conflict. I love that. This is what living on Incline is about: is how do I teach resilience, grit? And I think
yes.
a lot of us, of course we want our kids to have it better than we do, or we did when we were growing up or whatever, but we by protecting them to a place where they are so sheltered, we're not giving them what they need to be able to survive in a world that's very, very difficult, very tricky. So I love what you're saying right now. That is such a huge part of parenting, is allowing our kids to be in on age appropriately, be in on some
Yes.
of the pain and conflict that we're going through as a family.
Yes, I mean, for example, right now, my husband is in Philadelphia. He's
Mm,
about ready to have major surgery. He's not going to be here for 3 to 3.5 weeks, maybe even longer, depending on recovery. And we sat our kids down on Saturday. Once we kind of had more of a plan, we kind of knew what was going to happen. We didn't want to tell them when we didn't know the plan yet. Sat them down and we're like, okay, this is what's going to happen, this is how we're going to handle this. And, of course, our eldest and our middle really understood and cried, obviously, because they're worried about dad. But we
yeah.
allowed that to happen. We allowed them to describe their emotions, but also ask their questions. Okay, what does this mean? is daddy going to be okay? So that was really helpful to them. And it was funny because I noticed, so we had this, it was probably about a 30-minute span where they were really struggling. And then our youngest, who's 4, so she's still not like really understanding what's happening, she starts playing with something else. And I started to see the eldest gravitate towards her that she was playing with, and then the middle one started to gravitate. And what I noticed there is that they felt comfortable. They felt safe enough to leave that
Mhm.
conversation, that they understood what was gonna happen. They got to emote about what was gonna happen because we understand that this is tough, but they were okay, and they didn't have any more
Mhm.
questions at that point. Now, have they asked questions since daddy had to leave? Yes, and we still keep
Yeah.
them up to date, again, age appropriate. But even, they see me tearing up from time to time, about, daddy
Mhm.
being gone or what could happen. And it's funny because, my middle one the other day, she sees me tearing up a little bit and she runs over and gives me this big hug and she goes, "Mommy, it's
Oh,
gonna be okay." And I'm like, "You're right, honey. I do know it's gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this. It's God's gonna get us through." So it's again bringing them back to that as well. But it really again allows them to understand mommy and daddy are struggling and this is going to be hard, and but we also know what the end result is going to be, and the end result is going to be something better for us. So that might mean we're going to struggle for a little bit and it's going to be tough and daddy's going to be in a lot of pain, but our family is going to get through this together. We're going to do this, and God's got it. So it's been interesting to see how this research has actually influenced me and influenced the way that I
mhm.
parent and the way that my husband parents, because we see how important it is. And that was what the whole point was that we would know and
Yeah.
we would understand something new about
I
attachment.
love that, and thank you for your vulnerability, and I think about what you're learning right now through what you're going through, and it's just there's so much. You have so much that you're trying to do all at the same time. You work for some great people, but it's just a lot right now. It is a lot, and it's heavy. What do you think you're learning right now as thank you again for bringing it up. Your husband's gonna be, laid up for 3.5 weeks and won't be with you
Yep,
and the kids, and you still have to do your job, and you still have to function.
yep.
What do you think you're learning right now?
It's funny because I learn something different in each one of these situations that God brings me in. First of all, I go back to, my Ebenezer's, the things in my life where I saw God really show up. And one of them was the dissertation actually was graduating, and that's one of the things that I go back to is that I saw God work in that area. Um and I'm going back to those things, but like I said, it doesn't always happen the same way each time. And what I think I'm
Mhm,
learning in this one, and I know that this is probably what God's teaching me here, is that it's okay to ask for help. I'm pretty
mm,
independent when it comes to what I do and what I can do and what I like to do. But in this situation, I can't be. I have to ask
mm,
for help. So, for example, today, I had to ask my sister-in-law if she could watch my daughter while we did this interview because our nanny is currently sick and she's usually the one taking care of my daughter. And so I had to reach out and I had to say, "Hey, I need help. Can you help me in this?" And I've had to do this with my colleagues. I told them ahead of time. I said, I don't know what this is gonna look like. I'm gonna need you guys to really step up and probably take over
yeah,
some areas that I may be lacking in the next couple of weeks, just because I have a lot more that I usually have to do. And you know what? It's been wonderful to see. I went in yesterday
mm,
into an area where I usually have applications I have to look at and have to do, and I wasn't even expecting it, and all of the applications I'm supposed to do were already done. And it's
mm,
just wonderful to see people not only see it and me ask for it, but then to them to do
mm,
it without me saying, "Hey, can you do this today?" Like, they're already doing it, they're already helping me. Um, And isn't that how the body of Christ is? Oftentimes we say, "Hey, I'm here to help you whenever you need it," but it's also asking for the help that's hard. And
Okay.
so, I am learning that it's okay to ask for help, first of all, and second of all, that I am asking for help from the people that are trustworthy, that I know will help me. And that to me again is something that God's really working on me is saying, "Hey, you don't have to do this alone." And I can't do this alone right now. I can't. But God's putting people specifically in my life that are like, not only did I say I would help you, but when you ask for it, I am helping you.
So beautiful. And you don't know what you have in people until you're in a crisis, I think. You don't know how people love you and will respond to you until you get vulnerable enough to say, "Man, I'm in trouble. I'm struggling." And you have a lot of gratitude. I can getting emotional thinking about these people. Say, "Hey, you could put flowers on my desk, but if you get my work done for me, I would." That's much more powerful is
Lord,
having those
yes,
applications done. Yeah,
yes.
and so it's just I feel a lot of gratitude and kind of finishing up. Why do you think it is so difficult for you specifically? What makes it difficult to ask for help?
I think that comes from a family culture. My family of origin was very much we do this, we take care of ourselves.
Mhm.
And so I think a lot of it is
Sure.
that way, but it's also, I think that the culture in general when you're a woman who is also a, a working mom that you feel like you got to do it all. And,
Yeah.
usually, like, I usually keep a pretty good balance, I think, of being mom and being wife and being, worker. But I think in this regard, it's taking on I'm taking on my husband's role for a little bit, and, obviously, he's still gonna be on the
Yeah.
phone and stuff like that, but he's not in the home.
Sure.
And I'm taking on other things that I don't normally have to. And so that's when I have to say I don't have to do everything. And I think I'm
Yeah.
coming to that point too is that I don't have to do everything. I try to do everything, but I don't
It
have
felt hard for you to say that right there. Like, it
Yes.
felt like it was difficult to get out.
Yes, it is, but
Yeah.
I think that that's one of the things too
Yeah.
is, like, I've already asked, a friend of mine so Jesse's surgery is tomorrow. I don't know when you're putting this out here, but it's tomorrow,
Yeah.
and I've already asked my sister-in-law, "Can we be at your house in case something goes bad with the surgery? I wanna be with family," and she's obviously like, "Yes, of course, you need to be here." And then, Jesse is not allowed to move for 24 hours at all after his surgery. So he can't call us after the surgery. We're not gonna be able to talk to him for a little bit. So I've already like put in place like being out with friends the next day so my kids aren't like ruminating, aren't thinking about, hey, we haven't talked to
Yeah.
dad. Dad's not here. What's happening with the surgery? So I've already put those things in place and it's really wonderful to see like my sister-in-law step in and say, "Yes, we're gonna do dinner. You're gonna be here." And then one of my best friends say, "Yes, we're gonna go and we're gonna keep the kids busy for a couple of hours so that they're not thinking about it." And I think that's what I need. What I need is for these people to step in, and God is supplying that in a beautiful way in people that I have gained trust with. I wouldn't ask this of everybody, but there are select few that I have said, "I can feel safe if something bad happens with you. I can feel safe if I get a phone call, and I have to struggle. I know you're gonna, take care of my kids at that point because I've got to handle whatever it is." Um, and that's what I love about the people that God has put in my life. But those relationships took time. I wouldn't
Right.
have asked, just somebody that I met a month ago to do this for me.
Right.
One of my best friends, we've
Yeah.
been friends for close to 5 years now, and I feel safe in that. And so that's where I think that's different too, is that God's saying these people are safe for you to do this. And they are going to be there for you, and they understand, and I don't have to
Mm.
explain it. I think that's the other thing. I don't have to explain what I need from them. They already know. So, again,
Yeah, that's
vulnerable,
awesome.
this is where you find that safety, and you find that safety in therapeutic relationships, but you find that safety outside of therapeutic relationships as well. And it's been a beautiful thing to see my relationship with my
Yeah.
sister-in-law grow to this point where I feel that comfortability to ask her to do this, and I feel that comfortability of my best friend to do this. So it's a beautiful thing to
Yeah, and
have
those are
people.
the across the board, those are the components to have close relationships, whether it's therapeutic or in our friendships,
Mhm.
our family is vulnerability, openness, the ability to ask for help, and to put boundaries in place with people who aren't up for those kinds of things. Not everybody's going to be safe, like you're saying, but we have a lot of people to thank. I mean, obviously, your sister-in-law, we should be thanking her for you being on living on Incline. Thank her, please, for us, because you wouldn't be here without her. And I don't know, God's outside of time, and so I wonder if we could just pray for Jesse. And I know maybe people are going like, well, this thing already happened, but God can figure all that stuff out. So I'm
Right.
I'm with you real time, and I'd love to just pray for you as we close our time together. We don't do this with all our guests, but you got some pretty big things to face, and the kids are going to be going through some things. So is it okay if we pray for you?
Please do. I would love that.
Yeah, Lord, we just lift up Jesse to you, and we just his body from top to bottom. You created him, so we're just praying that this would be successful, wildly successful surgery that he's having. Um, be with Mercy, be with the kids as they just have a lot of things that they're going to not know for a while. And they would just feel that peace that passes all understanding that would guard their hearts and minds. And this would be a testimony of your goodness, of your faithfulness. And so again, just thank you that we can look back at those Ebenezers. We can remember how you've been faithful and that you're going to do it again. And we love you. We're just grateful that we can come to you and we have hope because of you. And by your stripes, we're healed. We believe that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very
Dr.
much.
Mercy, you are kind, generous, brilliant, and thank you. We're just grateful. I hope we can do this again and appreciate you and how you do model for so many people, not just how to be a professional, but just how to be vulnerable, how to be a good Christian woman in this world that we live in that's full of not great examples. You're a great mom, and it's just a phenomenal colleague. Thank you so much for doing this, and we appreciate you so
Of
much.
course.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. This is Living on Incline. Guys, please hit subscribe, like, share, comment, all that good stuff. And we appreciate it. Check out AACC, Light University, all the good stuff over there that Dr. Mercy's doing, all kinds of great trainings. Mental health coaching is huge for your churches, for your communities. And anyway, thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks again for joining us on Living on Incline, sponsored by Recovery Life. Would you do us a favor and just hit that subscribe button, share with your friends? And again, we want to explore our full God-given potential and see what we are capable of. So again, hit that subscribe button, and thank you so much for joining us on Living on Incline.